We live in a new age, and it's time for us to upgrade our tinfoil hats. Operation Tinfoil is a freedom-focused small business and trusted sponsor of this show. Their super comfortable new line of beanies and baseball caps will not only crown your skull in style, but each of these dome defenders is lined with a silver mesh that blocks up to 99% of EMF radiation from cell phone towers, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and yes, even 5G. We don't know what EMF radiation does to the brain long term, but neither do they, so don't be their guinea pig and don't wait around to find out. Get your stylish tinfoil hat of the future today at gettinfoil.com. Use the promo code SYSTEM for $10 off your order. Again, that's gettinfoil.com. Use the promo code SYSTEM for $10 off your order. Today's episode is sponsored by Astero's cybersecurity services. These days, organizations of all sizes are targets for cyber criminals, disgruntled employees, or even nation-state attackers. Astero's performs cybersecurity services providing expert guidance to help organizations defend against threats and protect their data. Astero specializes in penetration testing, where they perform ethical hacking on networks, web apps, or organizations as a whole to simulate what an attacker would do and plug the discovered holes before anyone malicious finds and exploits them. Asteros also specializes in vulnerability management, security awareness training, phishing simulations, cloud security audits, compliance readiness assessments, and much more. As technology expands, it becomes easier and easier to run a business, but if your security is not growing along with your company, then
all I ask is, if we have to give these bastards our lives,
security is not growing along with your company, then you're going to run into problems. If you don't personally have a company of your own, definitely pass this information along to someone who does, because for a limited time, Asteros is offering companies an attack surface audit completely free. Let Asteros discover potential entry points to your network and how susceptible your company or organization is to cyber attacks. To learn more and to take advantage of this essential offer, just go to asteros.com/free. That's Asteros, ASTEROS.com/free.
The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Remember a simpler time when it was okay to be weird, have fun, and think for yourself?
Well, those days are over. The art of conversation itself is dead. Sacrificed on the altar of divide and conquer and disguised as political correctness and spared feelings. I believe that unity can only come from truth, and that the only way to find truth is by exploring and embracing our valuable differences and having civil, open-minded, and uncomfortable discourse. Conspiracies, politics, religion, and all the taboo topics are really just praise you don't bring up around the Thanksgiving dinner table. We are here to literally change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time. So if you're easily offended, put your big girl panties on and buckle up, Buttercup, because you chose to be here. I'm Dan Smots, you are the power, and this is The System is Down.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the least comfortable show on the web. It's The System is Down, where we talk about all the uncomfortable topics like conspiracies, politics, religion, and all the libertarian shit that you can shake a libertarian shit stick at. This is another one of these candidate grilling episodes, which we've done a bit in the past, and the biggest complaints that I've gotten in the past for these episodes is that they just weren't mean enough. So I brought, of course, with me today, the one and only resident asshole of the Libertarian Party, Dave Casey, to join me. Dave, how are you, sir?
Bro, great to be here. And I'm delighted that I can finally put my assholedom to some use.
Weaponized assholery.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. And for those that aren't familiar with this is where we get together with some of the candidates that are representing us, or trying to represent us, and we give them some questions and have nice, frank conversations with them, all in good fun. But there are things that need to be discussed if you're willing to take up that torch, or willing to claim that you're going to take up that torch. Now, before we get into it, I have to remind you guys about my favorite sponsor, which is you guys in the Downers Club. People like Melanie Roberts, Kimberly Owen, Brian something, RJ JC, Justin Savoy, Silas Lane, Amy Lepore, Andrew Chatteron, Leah Ann, Autumn, Patrick, Magoo, Zerathanarchy, Keith Compston, SDG, Level 0, Brian Johnson, Carolina B, Craig DaCosta, Tim Brown, Nathan Sipes, Trenton Campbell, Justin Zielinski, and many, many more. If you want to get your name on that list and possibly have it read incorrectly someday, go on over to patreon.com/The System Is Down, where you'll get not just the opportunity to support this show, but you'll get more weird, more raw, more offensive, more weekly content, including, but not limited to, our after parties, which we might be doing one today. We'll see how things go. We'll see if Mike makes it through the entire grilling and keeps wanting more punishment by the end of it. But that's that. Thank you guys. Go join the Downers Club at patreon.com/The System Is Down, and we will see what happens after the show. Now, we're going to bring him in just a minute, but let's get some pre-talk with Dave. Dave, nope, wrong button. Nope. Dave.
Dude.
Any predictions on how this is going to go? Any thoughts leading into this?
Yeah, I have a couple notes, but I'm open. I'm ready to learn. I did not smoke any weed or pack a bowl for this show. Not because I
There's
wanted
still
to be
time.
sharp or anything. I just figured there's a cop on the show, so it's like,
Right.
yeah.
That's right.
It's not the day.
Yes, I'll have to be discreet with my partaking, but it's all good.
That's right. Take it out of the screen
Mm-hmm.
if you want to hit that thing.
Do the Autodasic, where I'm pretty sure snorted blow while he was interviewing Joe Jorgensen, but
Love it.
that's
Love it. I
just
just saw that. That was awesome.
that's the
Who
most
heard that
base
shit?
libertarian shit that you can get. Anyway, whatever. Let's just jump into this thing. This is candidate grilling with Mike Ter Maat. And we are here. We are here with the one and only Mr. Mike Ter Maat of the potentially Libertarian presidential candidacy. Mike, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you guys? I'm just terribly happy to be with you all. We're already at odds. We already have a disagreement coming right out of the boat. I mean, we're not even on the dock yet. We haven't even stepped both feet off of the railing of the boat, and we're already in a disagreement.
What's our disagreement?
Dave is not the asshole in charge of the Libertarian Party. I am.
All right.
I am
Well, this should be fun then.
He may be a distant second, but so far in the rearview mirror, I'm not sure that's actually him.
Mike, how many people have called you an asshole on a regular basis on the internet?
On a regular basis?
I think I have a feeling that Dave has you beat there.
They make it through the first round. They typically don't get to the second round. But having been, as you point out, a cop for 11 and a half years in Broward County, I'm pretty sure the number of times I've been insulted in public exceeds either of you two by a factor of at least 100.
Well, good. Then you're in good company here. And thank you for being a good sport and coming on and doing this. This is all, I mean, it is in good fun. We do appreciate you doing this. If we do give you harsh, criticisms or pushback, it's just because the mainstream media likes you less than we do, and they're going to give you much harder pushback than we're ever going to give you. So if anything, we're just iron sharpening iron, and if you're wanting to represent us, we gotta ask some questions. So question number one.
All of that. I'm not sure that they will dislike me even more than you guys do, but they will certainly dislike me for different reasons.
Right.
Than you guys do.
They will be much less honest about their
that.
criticisms than we will, I assure you. Now, just right out the gate, question number one, of course, I have to ask the most important topic for the Libertarian presidential candidate. What is your stance on Aleppo?
My stance on Aleppo is the following. Gary Johnson's campaign did not implode because he forgot the name of a town in Syria. The reason his campaign imploded was because he had not given the libertarians of the United States, which is to say most people, enough reason to hang on to him. You contrast that with Donald Trump, who famously once said, and I'm only going to be able to paraphrase this, I won't nail the quote perfectly, I could probably go down to Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and not lose a great deal of support. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that shooting someone on Fifth Avenue is worse than forgetting the name of a city in Syria.
Debatable,
But
depending on which culture
why
in.
They love Trump. They know why they hate him. He's crystal clear on what it is that he wants to do. And that's the kind of campaign that we need to run, and not the kind of campaign that we've had the past few cycles.
So let's talk about the past few cycles, because I have heard people compare you a little bit to the Gary Johnson type. You're buttoned up
You
and
have
official.
not. Name one human being who thinks I have anything in common with Gary Johnson. Go ahead, name one.
I can name 2, and they're both on this show.
Wow. Okay, then you guys
So
go
sorry,
first.
Mike.
What do you think I could possibly have in common with Gary Johnson?
Well, why do you take such offense to that?
Because his campaign and mine, the only thing that we have in common is that we have a capital L in Libertarian. He ran a campaign that said, I'm fiscally conservative like a Republican and socially liberal like a Democrat, which was not only bad strategy, but arguably a lie to the American people. We are not fiscally conservative the way Republicans are because they're not fiscally conservative. We're not socially liberal like Democrats for the same reason. They are not socially liberal. We don't go around beating people into agreeing with our feelings about social matters, either inside of our party or outside of our party, and then canceling anyone who doesn't disagree with us. We're not like Democrats. We're actually socially liberal. You go ahead next. What do you think I could possibly have in common with Gary Johnson?
All right.
Your turn.
Now, I don't even say it necessarily as a negative. You're a very nice guy, and Gary was a very nice guy, and I voted for Gary. But I do think
you're a nice guy. That puts the 3 of us in the same bucket.
And I'm not running for president either. So my criticisms aren't on your personality; they are on whether or not you're the right fit for the candidacy is all. Now with
Agreed.
Gary,
And in that sense, Gary Johnson and I don't have very much in common. It is true that he had at least half of a career in public policy and public service, and good for him. And I do believe it is for that reason that he got some deference from some donors, from some voters, from some media. This is the reason why he reached double digits in the polls. So to the extent to which, that is important, I'll have to own that. Yes, I have had a couple of careers in public service and in public policy. I will admit to being an expert on both economics and in criminal justice reform. And for this reason, I think that the mainstream media will give us a look. I think the major podcasts will give us a look. I think the major donors will give us a look. And I think a hell of a lot of Americans who recognize a libertarian streak in themselves will give us a look also. But having said that, he did implode after reaching double digits in the polls. And that's because he did not do a good job of differentiating his campaign from Republicans and Democrats.
Dave, any thoughts?
So yeah, just to, I put my hand up when you said what's between me and Gary Johnson. So I would think that there's at least a portion of the movement and the party that would say, look, if we can dress the part and go out and present a reasonable argument against the duopoly and propose, some reasonable solutions to the voting populace, then that would really move our movement. That would move the needle. And I think I fundamentally disagree with that. So that's the connection I would make. That, Mike, if I walked into Central Casting and there were 20 guys lined up saying I was running for president, I would go, absolutely.
Campaign, we will get a look. But okay. Credibility is hard earned, and it is the coin of the realm when it comes to politics. You have to have credibility. But having said that, you will not hang on to it if you do not put forward a completely differentiated campaign, which is why, I'm running on the Gold New Deal, right? It's the most transformational collection of libertarian ideas. We push it very hard. We're completely committed to it, which is why it's branded. It has its own website. We're out there pushing it every day so that people can trust this is not something we're backing down on. It's something that we can't back away from. It's what we're all about, the most transformational ideas. If someone doesn't like them, they won't be one of our supporters. But we won't fall apart because I forget the name of a town in Syria.
Okay. I can't hear myself. Hold up. No. So you've talked about the Golden New Deal thing briefly and the interactions that we've had, which, our interactions have just been my silly nonsense on the street. But can you explain the Golden New Deal, just the elevator pitch? Because that is an important thing. I suspect that you're on to something, but the elevator pitch is really all that matters to a mainstream voter.
I would agree with that. For most voters, it is the elevator speech, and the 10-second version is that we need a new relationship between us and the government. As I always say, between us and the government, we will tolerate. I think it's hard to argue that the relationship between us and our government has developed in a way that most Americans would appreciate. I think that most Americans are waking up to the idea that many of our problems are caused by that bad relationship, by bad public policy. Our economy doesn't look all that different than it did in the 70s and the 80s, but more Americans than ever before recognize that inflation doesn't just fall off of a tree, that the amount of debt we have isn't just something that grows organically. It is something that results from bad decisions and politicians taking advantage of their power and our problem. I think that most Americans are ready for a completely anti-war message. Gone are the days when most Americans could live with the simple dignity of being represented by a foreign policy that reflects our most basic values of the pursuit of peace and prosperity. If you've got a government like the one that we have, and you recognize that there is some value in the Constitution, then you have to recognize that we need to fight our way back to the Constitution, because the relationship that we have with our government, that our government has imposed on us, has got to change, and has got to change in very fundamental ways.
Yeah, I agree on paper. It's just, I don't know. It's hard for me to get excited about any libertarian candidate.
And in principle, the issue is how to fight your way back.
How to what?
Really quick, if I
Go
fight
ahead,
your way
Dave.
back, right? Yeah, 1 second.
You smoking his weed off camera?
Yeah, sorry, I had to hit that pipe. Yeah, I think that might be another one of the disagreements that we have at a fundamental level, Mike, is that I feel like that you would like to restore faith in the institutions of government. So this reminds me more of Joe Jorgensen than Gary Johnson.
I think you and I
Hold up. Guys. I'm going to mute you both.
Mike,
We can't talk over each other.
let me
Just
finish-
let the question happen.
Finish the thought. So if that's the goal, I would say that our job right now as a third party that isn't really equipped to take on the two other ones, right, that are really having the main game, that we should be conscious of that. So I think that maybe the time is more for, like the Shane Hazel approach of like, hey, this is a murder cult. It's not the government's not too darn bossy, as Joe Jorgensen would say. Or maybe that's true. It's just, it's ignoring the fact that it's also a murder cult, right? So I think if the president's job on the LP ticket is to be a messenger, if we're all in agreement that you're not going to win the presidency, then it's really about who can deliver the message the most, because all of your credentials look great, but I know a lot of libertarians that know the stuff you know. You know what I'm saying? So who can deliver it the best and reach the most amount of people? And why is that you?
The reason it's me is because more people will listen to me than will listen to someone without credibility. Now let's come back to that, because you said something that was just objectively false. When you said that we disagree because you think I'm all about restoring faith in the institutions of government. I'm sorry. What about my website that says end the FBI, end the Fed, stop altogether federal prosecution of crime, right? What about that sounds like restoring institutions? What is it about decentralizing? Exactly. There's nothing about restoring institutions in our federal government when I say that we need a constitutional amendment to allow states to unilaterally opt out of federal supremacy and unilaterally opt into nullification. That is not a message of, hey, everybody, let's help the federal government work better. No, there are elements of the federal government that need to go right now, and then there are elements of the federal government that need to go over time. But ultimately, much of the federal government has to be sunset. And the way that you do that is not by standing up and saying, I'm really upset, I don't like the federal government. The way you do that is by letting people understand that you, as a campaign of credibility, know how to get it done. You've been there, you've seen the way the institutions work, and you have a plan, because we back up all of our ideas, even though they are the most transformational ideas. We back them up with real life plans and solutions. I know how to get rid of the FBI. I know how to get rid of the Fed. I've worked with both of those institutions. I know what they do. I know how they do it. And parenthetically, I know how Washington works. Washington doesn't work by just a new president showing up and saying, I don't like the FBI, let's sunset it. What you have to do is replace the leadership, shrink it down, and then move legislation to get rid of it piece by piece. You need to break it up and move it into the various parts of the rest of the government, especially down to the state level. Similarly with the Fed, you got to replace the leadership, you got to shrink it down, you got to break it up into pieces and sunset the pieces one at a time. It takes longer than a week, but this is the way that you need to go at these institutions. It's not a matter of reform. If there's anything that we've learned about the Fed and the FBI, just as these two examples that we're picking on, it is that they have each had multi-generational runs where they have replaced leadership time and time again, and they continue to prove that they are not up to the task that we have assigned to them and that we have entrusted with them. Notwithstanding, lots of people would argue, I don't think I would argue in the case of the FBI, but I might argue in case of the Fed, there have been lots of well-meaning people who have tried to make that institution work well. Notwithstanding all of that, it has proven that institutionally, fundamentally, it cannot live up to its charter, and we need to move on.
I agree with you there. Dave, I want to give you just a second to, if you had a response to that, since you brought it up. Dave?
Only that, 40, 50 years ago, Ron Paul was saying that we should abolish the FBI and we should abolish the Fed, and every libertarian knows this. But I just think that there's something that's kind of, you and I, we're just not operating on the same playing field, because you're saying,
why is that?
hey,
wait,
Mike,
why don't you tell
Mike,
me
let me
what
finish,
it
man.
is?
I'm trying to get the thought out. Ready? So you're telling me you have the solution and the ability to end the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the money printing apparatus known as the Fed, but you're operating under the assumption that it's possible you could become president to do that. So I'm saying your time would be much better spent telling people what the Fed does, because you won't end it. You won't be able to, because you won't become president. You see what I'm saying? It's like this LARP that we have to play.
Well, I think there's,
I know you know how the Fed works.
Two different levels to this conversation.
Yes, I know how it works, but understand how federal politics and national campaigning work. They work because people, and understand, this is not, what we're talking about is not, a campaign for some activist to just launch out and start railing against the Fed. I'm sorry, you could do that tomorrow if you want. You don't have to wait for there to be a federal election. You don't have to wait for there to be a presidential cycle. What we're talking about is something different. What we're talking about is taking advantage of the expectation that there is going to be a presidential election in November of 2024. What's different about that than 2023? Well, what's different about that is that the American public is expecting a horse race among individuals. Most Americans don't pay that much attention to the philosophies behind them, but they take very seriously who is going to be their next president. And for this reason, the media focuses attention on the nominees. We need to be able to take advantage of that. The media will focus on a nominee that they believe is either a credible threat to go all the way, or at the very least, someone who is a dark horse, good story, potential interrupter. They will not pay any attention to you if you either act like, or God forbid, announce, I'm here even though I can't win. I don't really plan to play a role in trying to disrupt, or God forbid, winning the presidential race. I'm just here to spread my message. Right. That's not taking advantage of the system that's set up. What we wanted, anyone who wants to do that, more power to you. Go get them, Tiger. But if we want to take advantage of the presidential campaign season, we have to play that game, not some other game that we all think is a good game to play, and it is. I encourage every activist out there who hates the Fed to say so loudly. But if we want to take advantage of the presidential cycle, we need to put forward a credible campaign with credible solutions and talk about how to get things done, because that's the reason that people will listen. Once you have people listening, you can convince them that the relationship between them and their government is not what they want it to be. They understand that already, and that it can change and that life can be better off in the future. And remember, the object of the game here is, yes, to change who the president is, either in this cycle, the next cycle, or the next cycle, to being more libertarian. Capital L, lowercase l. We need to push the American public toward recognizing that libertarianism is in their interest.
I agree with you both on that point. I think that this conversation it's multi-layered, because we're talking to Mike, you're running for the Libertarian nominee right now. So there's like a whole world of libertarian questions that the rest of the world doesn't give a shit about. And then after that, we still have to talk about, if hypothetically you became the nominee, then you have to start talking about those bigger, broader issues. And we can go in all different sorts of directions. It doesn't matter. But I do think there's something to Dave's point that, I don't think either of us are asking you to say, I'm not going to win president, but having some sort of realistic mindset about it, that the odds are certainly stacked against you. And if that is the case, then it does become the biggest activist platform for libertarian messaging. So that's where I think that's what Dave was going for.
That's right. And what's the best way to take advantage of that platform? That's not a rhetorical question. I'm actually asking you to think about it. What's the best way to take advantage of that platform?
Well, you're talking to the guy who worked on the Vermin Supreme campaign and the Jeremy Kauffman campaign and wants Joe Exotic to be president in 2024. So I might not be the best person to answer that question, but I'm looking for some fun and to shake some shit up and get some eyeballs.
I appreciate that. I'm the guy who worked for assholes like George Bush, like the other George Bush, like Jack Kemp, like Bob Dole. So I may not be the perfect guy to ask either, but I have played in big-time politics.
Why is that? I'm sorry, man. That's very impressive, but why is that good credentials for the Libertarian
He was saying they weren't. He was saying he's not the best person to ask either.
Well, no. I mean, that should be brought up, though. I mean, like you did do that,
and then brought up. I was a Republican until the 90s.
Yeah, but not just a Republican voter.
I've been in the Libertarian Party for,
I have been working inside the movement for a long time.
That's right. And I have only come to the movement in the last 15 years, and I've only been a Libertarian for probably 20. So if you want someone who's been a Libertarian for 40 years,
I don't.
I'm sorry. 40 years ago, I was in the Republican Party.
What I'm asking you, Mike, what have you done for the movement? You served George H.W. Bush, and you worked in the economy. You worked in universities. You worked as a cop. When was the last private sector job you had? This is important stuff.
Private sector.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The last private sector job I had was as an entrepreneur. I started my own business that I ran for about 8 or 9 years. We were in the business of running events and online education and in-person education for financial services professionals. And we provided strategic consulting for a number of financial institutions and a number of nonprofits. A partner of mine and I had that business. It wasn't a big business. We had 3 or 4 employees, and that was about it. It was a nice little consulting shop, an education platform. Like I say, we did that for 8 or 9 years. It was good to put our 4 kids through college, and taught us a lot about, as you might imagine, entrepreneurship as well as the financial services business. Before that, I spent 9 years in the private sector, but I was in Washington advocating for free markets, less regulation. This was in the context of the financial services industry, but that's where I best got to know the Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve System, and other agencies that I worked with. So, I don't know if you want to count that as the private sector or the public sector, but it is true that I've had 2 fairly long careers in public service and in public policy. Before that, I worked for the White House for a couple of years in a couple of government agencies. I worked for a couple of banks in the 80s as a commercial finance officer and as a loan analyst when I first got out of business school. So I learned a lot about how businesses run, how they're financed, and the problems that especially that small businesses have. So, I've been around the block in public sector and private sector for a long time.
I noticed you said public service, man. I feel like that's people that use that terminology are creatures of government. Public service? Come on. Like, I would never refer to a government job as public service. This is just, I'm trying to get across the fundamental differences between, maybe this is the anarchist-minarchist split, but I think it's deeper than that, man. Like,
and
do you think
it
it's
also
beyond...
has to do with, you brought up, hold up. You've also brought up credibility quite a few times, which there is something to that for the, the mainstream voter. They will care about that. But when it comes to libertarians, probably the more credible you are, the less likely that we're going to support it because, government shit, we don't tend to like that.
That you don't like? Say that again. You don't like what?
Just your credentials and your credibility. That will matter if you are the candidate. It will matter to people that don't care about libertarianism. They're just finding somebody new. However, when you're seeking the libertarian nomination, those credentials don't matter as much because we're less inclined to trust people who have worked in those positions.
I believe that is half true. There are people inside of our party who trust less people who have worked for the government. That's absolutely true. I don't believe it's true that a lot of people outside of our party won't care.
Oh, I was saying that they would. I'm saying for now to get the nomination, it's a different ball game than what it's going to be because those credentials don't bear as much weight.
It is a different ball game, yes, but you downplayed the effect of outside of our party. Outside of our party, virtually everyone is going to take seriously someone with credibility. And I would also differ with you when you said libertarians. No, most libertarians outside of our party, and parenthetically, I can tell you this anecdotally, having been around the United States the last few months, most libertarians inside of our party do take credibility very seriously and do appreciate the possibilities that a campaign built on credibility can achieve on the other side of the nomination. Now, if we can get back to this idea that working for the government isn't, some form of public service, I'm sorry. I don't think that that's a very astute thing to say, particularly to someone who has performed CPR in the middle of a highway as many times as I have. And I don't think it's a very astute thing to say to someone who spent a couple of years working very hard at trying to keep our federal government adherent to budget control law, learning how budget control law works, pushing back on how much spending was taking place, trying to convince people to do the right thing. It is a frustrating process, absolutely. But I don't see any other way around the fact that it's hard to understand the processes that matter unless you've played some sort of role in the processes themselves.
Go ahead, Dave.
Mike, I'm not one of them, but a large portion of the libertarian community would use a phrase like ACAB, all cops are bastards. They don't care what your credentials are or that you gave people CPR. And I will say, I do find that impressive, okay? And I'm not one of those libertarians who says we don't need cops and we don't need jails and all these things. But if you were a Air Force pilot, I would go, shit, that's impressive. I still wouldn't go, you should lead the Libertarian Party. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like that's your resume.
Yes, and you understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying I should lead the Libertarian Party because I was a cop. You're saying I
But
shouldn't lead the Libertarian Party because I was a cop.
But you just retired as a cop, and to my knowledge, you haven't been on like a decades-long atonement tour. Sorry for taking taxpayer dollars for being an enforcement agent of the state. You parlayed right in from retirement as a cop during COVID into running for the presidential candidate of this party, the most radical party in the country. So I'm having trouble making the connection. I know you can tell me you have the credentials because you worked in Washington. It's just like, that's not what I'm looking for, Mike. I think that you'd make a great sheriff of
Do you know
Broward
anyone
County.
else who is Go ahead.
No, I'm done. Sorry.
First of all, it is not true that a lot of people inside our party say all cops are bastards. That's just not true. There are some people that say that, but it is not a large number. So let's dispense with that just as an empirical matter. Never mind how you might feel about it or how I might feel about it. More importantly, I don't think there's anyone who is spending as much time and energy or has the expertise that I do to devote toward criminal justice reform. I'm the one who understands it best. I'm out there spending the most time on it. I've got the most transformational ideas and the credibility to back it up. And I spend an enormous time talking about changing the way that we manage police. Try to remember, Dave, I was a libertarian the entire time I was a police officer. So this idea that I need to go on some sort of atonement tour, please.
So how many people's rights did you violate while you were a cop?
Of who needs an atonement
I
tour.
agree. I'm not one for
Very
atonement
hard
tours.
for 11 and a half years at making that police department work
Only
as
if
best
you want to lead this party should you do that. You don't owe that to anybody, but if you want to lead this movement, this party, that, by the way, a bunch of activists worked really hard over the past 6 years to make this work and make it what it is. So you're kind of stepping in, Mike. Like, we've been here. Do you understand that? We built this. What you're looking at right now, we just had a great reset, little renaissance. Sure you heard of it? We did that.
I'm sorry, you did that without my hard work and my donations and my running for Congress because you don't care about all those things?
Mike, I've never heard your name until you announced you were running for president. So that's.
I was going to bring that up too. I'm not the one. Like, I don't know a lot of people, so it doesn't necessarily speak anything to you. But yeah, what is kind of your? I know we've touched on it a bit, but your background in the liberty movement and everything. Why haven't we heard your name?
You're right. I mean, I ran for Congress back in 21, 22. I was an active member and a part of the executive committee for the Broward County Libertarians. Before that, I was a registered libertarian. You're right. I'm sure Dave has been more involved with the caucus and with the party before 2020 than I was.
Okay.
And that's okay. Honestly. Yeah, I don't mean anything by it, but I'm not trying to lead the party.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I see where both of you are coming from, especially, like, I agree with Dave on the points that it's hard to just, I feel like everybody's kind of on edge in the movement because we've had a lot of these missteps. We've had a lot of bad faith actors come in and, it's a large hurdle to get over just to get the trust of libertarians. And with some of your background, that might make it a little bit more challenging. But I don't care necessarily. I haven't been hugely involved in the movement past 6 years. I guess I have been within then, but I don't discredit somebody based on how long they have or haven't been. But if you're going to run for president, that is something that has to come into effect because you can be a libertarian, or you can, I think that I've been a libertarian since I was 15. I had a Ron Paul sticker. I didn't even know what libertarianism was. I had a libertarian mindset, so I can say that it's been that long, but it's only been 5 or 6 years that I've actually been actively involved. So it is a little bit concerning to have somebody, I mean, no disrespect to you, anybody coming in who is a little bit more just button up and official feeling. I know that you have certainly constituents that respect somebody who wears, button-up shirts and things a little bit more than I do. But I am less likely to trust somebody. I'm just looking for the smoke. So
no tie though. No tie because it's a casual.
That's true. Good on you for keeping the top button unbuttoned and no tie. I respect that certainly, sir. There was no question in there, but feel free to respond if you want. Also, to the people in the chats, fake super chat. If you have questions, we'll get to some of them later. If you have questions for Mike, or if you want to call Dave an asshole, please put all caps fake super chat, because YouTube hates us and doesn't let us make money off their platform. But
or if you have questions for Dave and want to call Mike an asshole.
Either way, you can call me an asshole too.
Call me an asshole, yeah. Please feel free. You can let it loose, baby. It's all good.
Yeah, I think it's important. Like, I don't think any of us have, or at least Dave and I don't have any, and I don't think you either. I think we're all here in good faith trying to have a conversation, and it's important for it to get a little bit heated sometimes, because I am tired of having candidates fucking embarrass me. It's very important if somebody is stepping into that role, you're running for not just the Libertarian candidate position, you're running to speak for us. So it's important for us to know that if we're going to back you, we need to know, like, what you're saying on our behalf. Does that make sense?
I think it makes total sense. And indeed, the reason I'm here is because I don't feel like being embarrassed by the next campaign. I'm willing to do this about it. The amount of time and energy and personal money that I'm putting to this is quite significant. So I hope that you don't think that, I'm not taking this as seriously as someone else. The fact that I have expertise, I just don't think is a negative. And that's the way that expertise is developed, is through public service. So, I'm here to push the campaign process in the direction that I believe it needs to go, because I believe that we need a certain style of campaign on the other side of the nomination to take advantage of the opportunity that we have. We haven't spent any time talking about what that opportunity is, but it is huge. I would argue that it's more than just an opportunity. It's an obligation. I think we have an obligation as the Libertarian Party to put out there a campaign that takes advantage of the opportunity, because nobody else is going to do it. If there's anyone out there who thinks that a Republican is going to stand up for your individual rights, who is going to take a shot at limiting the power, the scale and scope of the Defense Department, of our forward footprint in a militaristic sense, that's just not going to happen. If there's anyone out there who thinks that the Democrat is going to stand up for your personal liberty or individual rights, it's insane. Democrats can't even spell the 10th Amendment. And by that, I mean literally 10th Amendment. This is a big problem in the United States, the growing authoritarianism that has taken over our government, because it has taken over the Republican and Democratic parties. And if anyone is going to stand up against that, the time is going to have to be now. And the people are going to have to be us. There's nobody else who's going to do this for us.
Yeah. Dave, you got any thoughts on that? I'm going to get to a couple fake super chats here in a minute, but go ahead, Dave.
No, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Joey Two Guns says, fake super chat, what makes you think your message is the one the party wants in light of the MC takeover? And I know you've had some Mises Caucus support, and you're not a Mises Caucus hater from what I've witnessed and everything, but I think what he's getting at there is the Mises Caucus is going for maybe a little bit more edge than what you seem to be going for. And I asked you that, I think, in Florida as well. Like, are you planning on doing what sets you apart other than a good, solid message?
The messaging is the most important part. And by the way, you give away too much when you set it up like that. I'm a member of the Mises Caucus. I've been a member of the Mises Caucus for years. They have my time, my effort, and my money. So this idea that, oh, Mike, you're not a Mises hater. I'm sorry. Are you guys Mises haters?
Yes.
I never called you that, Mike. That's one thing. I know that's a fact that I know you can get along with all camps. It's all good.
I'm fine with setting it up that way, because I'm not here to lie about you and paint you as something you're not. I've seen like your interactions with them and everything.
Why would you suggest
because I work with a lot of them. Because typically, if we're having a heated conversation with somebody, it's probably somebody that fucking hates the Mises Caucus. And just for the audience listeners to know that that's not what you are. So the way that Joey Two Guns set up his question made it seem like you were at odds with the Mises Caucus, and that's not the case.
But it's not just not the case. It's insane. The reason that I'm campaigning is because of the agreement that I do have with my caucus. The issue is that I'm not a hater of the other caucuses. I love the other caucuses. I participate with them. I give them money also, because I love the conversations that they have, the movement that they're trying to push forward. And to the extent to which they don't hate on the Mises Caucus or each other or other caucuses or anybody else for that matter, they will continue to have my support. The reason I'm in this is the same reason that the Mises Caucus came into existence, and that is a profound disappointment with the past national campaigns, particularly an inability to differentiate from the other parties because they weren't sufficiently adherent to foundational libertarian principles. That's what this is all about. Now, this idea that my messaging isn't sufficiently edgy, I'm sorry, have you gone to goldnewdeal.org? We're talking about the most transformational ideas. If someone has an idea about how our campaign should go further in terms of advocating a particular policy, let me know. Let me know. Let's talk that through. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're not. But maybe you're right.
Mike.
Maybe there are areas where we could go further. But we are putting out there pretty radical ideas, from sunsetting agencies to getting the government completely out of education, strict terms on bodily autonomy, getting rid of relationships between the government and corporations altogether, everything from regulation to taxation. A lot of people don't appreciate the extent to which corporate taxation has driven so many bad policies in the United States, how it fundamentally screwed up our insurance system in the medical sphere, as just one point of example. So, yes, it is in agreement with the Mises Caucus at a very fundamental level that this campaign is based.
Go ahead, Dave.
So yeah, I appreciate anything that, if you've donated money to the caucus, that's awesome. If you can get along with the classical liberal caucus, those guys are fucking, I don't know, nutless and awful and weird, and that's cool, man. You're a politician, so I don't blame you for having to kind of get along with everybody.
Well, not the ones that
totally
I've met
bro.
and the ones I've dealt with, but okay.
And that's fine. I'll separate at least. Like, I would put Spike Cohen in the same category as you with the Mises Caucus. It's like, you're a member. You may have done some events and stuff, but you're not a true believer, man. Not in the Mises Caucus, the way that the true believer section of that caucus is. If you were, you would go, this is the way.
I don't know if I agree with you on
These
that.
guys are
Go
doing
ahead.
it. Okay, that's fine. That's fine if you don't. But I kind of wanted to talk more about the way
Who is the arbiter, Dave? Are you the arbiter of who is truly Mises?
Of what? No, not
you
at all. I just know that I'm an organizer, so I know who does the work.
Who's more Mises than someone else?
Mike, I'm a state organizer, so I know who does the work, who really just shows up to do the shit within the caucus. It's fine. You got a presidential campaign to run, dude. This is not a criticism. I appreciate what you've done with the caucus, but I want to talk about candidates and how we get them, because you stand out in the way that we get candidates. Dan, you cool with this? Can I just ask this question?
Sure.
Take a minute. Okay.
I'm just reading some chats.
So for over a year, since before Reno, if you ask any libertarian in the party, who do you want to be president in 2024? Depending on who you ask, you'll get 3 names, Mike, and that's it. Dave Smith, Spike Cohen, and Justin Amash. That's the split amongst the radicals, the Mises Caucus, your classical liberal types, and now Chase Oliver has been thrown into that mix. I've seen the polls, man. This is who the classical liberal caucus wants, and the Mises Caucus isn't rallying around you. So my question is, I think we have a unique opportunity as a party to start recruiting candidates. Like, people are pleading with Spike, pleading with Dave. Please run for president. Please, please, please. Should not this be the way that we get our torchbearers, rather than, hi, everybody, I've been a libertarian. I think I have the best answers, and check out my great policy prescriptions. Do you understand? That's, I think, another one of the big differences, man. Why would we go against our people? No, why would we go against our people, what they want, what they're asking for? Why?
All right.
They want
let's
one
take
of those
those three things one at a time.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. No, we should not go against our people. That was number 3. Number 2, yes, I understand what you're saying. And number 1, no, it's just not true that Mises people are not, rallying around our campaign. That's just, I'm sorry, Dave, that's not true. We have tremendous support inside the Mises Caucus. I believe that our campaign now has more support outside of the Mises Caucus than Chase Oliver does as well, by the way. So
I would prefer that, by the
no.
way. I'd put you over Chase for sure.
What's that?
I would put you
What's
over
that?
Chase for sure. I like that. I like that you were beating out Chase.
That.
That's
What
good.
I'm
That's
saying is,
sign.
outside of the Mises Caucus, I believe that we have more support than Chase Oliver does. So, having said that, the fundamental question that I think you were getting at is, shouldn't that be the way that we pick a nominee? No, absolutely not. The way you pick a nominee is not by saying, well, this person is really popular, let's try to get them to run. I'm sorry, if someone doesn't have the interest, I'm going to try to be polite here, the burn to do it, they're not going to be the best candidate for you. If they don't put together a campaign that looks every bit as professional as what the American people are going to expect for them to pay attention to, then they're not the right campaign for you. If they're not going to be able to deliver the type of credibility that's going to take to wake up the eyes of donors, voters, the media, then they're not the right campaign for you. This is the right campaign. Yes, I'm the one pushing it as opposed to being pulled in. But the characteristics of this campaign are what it's going to take to be successful. And people are recognizing that. Your assertion that people are not rallying around this campaign is just, I'm sorry, empirically false.
I don't know if they are. I haven't seen much rallying around any campaign at this point. But I don't know. I don't live on the internet as much.
Well, you're in
as most
social
people.
media more than you're on the ground. I get that.
Yes.
Well,
We all are.
that kind of, Mike, that's a. Let me ask you this then. Okay, if we're gonna assume you're not gonna win the 2024 race, you mentioned earlier you might run in a couple years, maybe you'll run a couple years after that. But if you don't win, and you said you're spending a lot of your own money on this, like, what is the point? I want to know, what is the utility for you running for president? If you do have to, you just came to our convention, Mike, and thank you for speaking there. I loved hanging out with you. Your wife is so nice. I enjoyed cooking waffles with you, but you had to spend money to get there and speak to these people. We had to pay Spike. You know what I'm saying? We had to pay Maj. This is coming out of your pocket. So I want to know what's in it for you, man. And I think that that's fair, because you are going someplace every weekend and you probably won't become president. So what are you going to get out of it? Like, I would say to Spike, hey, this is good for you. It's good for the movement. It's good for You Are the Power. I'd say to Maj, hey, man, this is good for you. It's good for the movement. It's good for Black Guns Matter. I would say to Dave, hey, this is good for you. It's good for the movement, good for Legion of Skanks, good for Part of the Problem. What do you get out of this, Mike?
I get out of it pushing the Libertarian Party in the right direction of professionalism when it comes to launching a national campaign, A. And B, I get the satisfaction of making a real difference that I believe that no other campaign is going to be positioned to be able to make in terms of the American political landscape. There's a huge opportunity for us to take advantage of. And I don't believe that I see another campaign out there, even on the horizon, that's going to be able to position itself to take advantage of that. You're right. It's not about me.
One last question, and then I'll pass it over. It's a quick one. Dave Smith said on Patrick Bet David's show with Larry Sharp and Spike, they asked, who would you want to see as the Libertarian nominee in 2024? And Dave said, someone really great, so I don't have to do it. Is there anybody that would enter this race that you would get out for?
Is there anybody who could enter this race for whom I would get out? Is that the question?
Yeah, correct.
No.
Okay. Respect.
All right, so let's get to some fake super chats. We got Hector Ruse here. Hector Ruse, in all caps because he's shouting like a boomer, says, boom, the system is down. Just nailed the argument for Mike Ter Maat. He is a competent candidate who won't embarrass us. Shut up, Hector. Shut up.
That's true. I'm not embarrassed by you, Mike. I think that you're a cool dude.
Yeah, no. I would certainly.
Hector actually ran a nice campaign in Florida last year as well.
Yeah, he did. Hector's cool. Yeah, and I would say I worked on the Joe Jorgensen campaign. Obviously, I have plenty of complaints. Didn't even end up voting for her. I just wrote in Spike twice because by the end of it, I was like, I just can't support. Like, it's a protest vote, voting Libertarian, and I can't throw my protest vote away even. But Mike, why should you be our protest vote? As Hector said, you won't embarrass us, but I mean, there's always the possibility of embarrassment. Nobody thought Joe Jorgensen would, put out the tweets that were embarrassing or say some of the things that she did, like on the spot, under the pressure. How do you know that you won't have an Aleppo moment? Like, I know that won't flatten you like it did Gary Johnson, but it does, for public perception, people latch onto every single gaffe and every single thing. I suppose my question is,
there will be gaps.
Yeah,
there will be gaps. There will be mistakes. There will be missteps. There'll be things that are said that either I or someone else wish that I hadn't said exactly the way it came out. But yeah, bear in mind two things. With me, there's going to be a lot fewer of them than someone else, just objectively speaking. And number two, we're going to be the campaign that gives people a reason to stay with us. I believe that most Americans, this is anecdotal, I don't have data, I got a little bit of data to back this up, but I believe most Americans have a bit of a libertarian streak. Most Americans appreciate the fundamental principles behind the Constitution. I think most Americans have to be reminded of those principles and how our government has drifted away from them. And most Americans will recognize that in our campaign if, and by the way, only if, you raise that flag high. You've got to be loud and you've got to be completely differentiated from the other parties to represent a clean break, a unique opportunity, a completely differentiated choice. If you raise that flag high enough, people will find you and they will hang on to it when those inevitable gaffes come up that obviously we're going to try to minimize. But we're not going to minimize them by being quiet about it. This is not Joe Jorgensen 2. This is not Gary Johnson 3. This is a very credible, very professional campaign, but completely differentiated, completely driven by principle, a fundamental recognition that our government has gone in the wrong direction at an institutional level needs to be pared back. Yeah, in some cases, there are agencies that, you might be able to get away with reforming, but much of the federal government needs to be sunset completely. And to do some of this, you do have to change the relationship between the federal government and states. We need states to stand up for us to the federal government. This is why I want to end the IRS, not because, merely taxation is theft, which of course it is. But because to the extent to which the government, the federal government, has an appetite for other people's money, meaning yours and mine, we need states to stand up for us as our representatives against the federal government. Anyone who's ever been audited, as I have, knows the lopsided power that is at play when the government, when the IRS comes after you. Everybody knows that in IRS court, you are literally guilty until proven innocent. It's a very, very weird relationship. And I think it's an excellent example that most Americans understand that has to, that shows that relationship has to change.
Yeah. And I will say that a lot of your messaging on sunsetting all this shit, I'm certainly down with. I would love for you to change me and Dave's mind on all this stuff. And I would love for you to be the candidate that we're really excited about. Like Gary Johnson, I didn't have anything against except for his messaging was pretty weak. So you keep that radical messaging. If we could get, even if you were Gary Johnson 2.0 and Gary Johnson 2.0 was based, I'd be down with Gary Johnson based 2.0. I don't care. It's all good. Go ahead.
Well, agreed. But remember that Gary's messaging wasn't merely bad as a matter of, and bad is the wrong word, wasn't merely weak as a matter of principle, in an absence of adherence to our principles. It was weak. I will use the word bad here. It was bad in terms of strategy.
Sure.
It was the wrong strategy. It was the wrong way to differentiate from the other parties. It was the wrong way to develop a unique choice for our party to represent. It was the wrong strategy to get attention and have people hang on to you. So, there are a lot of people who are saying, not a lot of people, there are some people in our party who are saying that these two concepts are at odds, right? That either you pursue a strategy to try to get a lot of attention and votes, or you pursue a strategy of loud messaging. I'm sorry, that's bullshit. The strategy has to be to lead with policy. That policy has to be completely based on our principles. This is the way that you develop yourself as a unique choice, and that is the way to get attention and have supporters hang on to you.
Dave, you got any thoughts before we get the next one?
I mean, only when you talk about supporters and Gary Johnson, I'm just, it sticks with me that he got the most vote total, but nobody stuck around with the party. So nobody's
right, the
figured that out
longevity.
yet.
And I was also going to ask, like, what happens after, hypothetically, like, if you lost, like Joe Jorgensen and Gary Johnson just kind of wandered away, and a lot of their followers just kind of wandered away, and they're not really, they pop up every now and then when there's a spicy topic to address, but almost never anything from them. Sorry, cut you off there, Dave.
Yeah, I don't get that. I'll be honest, I have no answer for that. I don't understand why they seem to have disappeared. A lot of thoughts that are very negative cross my mind to explain that type of behavior, but that's not fair. Right.
I think that's our concern, really, is like career
briefly.
Politicians that come in and they say the right things and they disappear because they didn't get what they wanted out of a thing. So.
Yeah, no, I get that. I got nowhere else to go. I'm not going anywhere else. I'm here with you guys. Assuming you'll hang in there, then we can have this discussion a year from now and 2 years from now.
Right on.
And as many years from now as you want.
Sure. Dave, I kind of interrupted yours and stemmed off of it. If you had anything else to add there before we move on.
Nope.
Okay. Fake Super Chat from Time Continuum says, what was Mike's response to the Broward cowards and the officer that flaked that led to the school shooting that led to dickhead Jib Guns David Hogg? All right. Sometimes my fake Super Chatters are drunk when they show up, so answer that however you want.
No. I think that I think we know what he's getting at, right? Yeah. And we've had multiple instances where police failed to do their job. I'm not a big fan of getting into particular cases because there's always some fact that you leave out, and all of a sudden someone gets pissed that you didn't drill down on some particular behavior of some particular cop, right? But in general, I think that, and this probably deserves more time. In general, we need to be able to trust that the police officers that we hire, and maybe we should talk more about how we need to reform the way that we manage law enforcement in the United States at the local level, especially. We need to be able to trust that police officers are going to do what it is that we hired them for. I believe that one element of reform ultimately needs to be that market forces are brought to bear in terms of how we manage law enforcement officers. And ultimately, eventually, hopefully, what that will mean is that either by virtue of politicians at the local level doing a better job, about which I'm not very optimistic, or an idea about which I'm much more optimistic, which is bringing liability insurance carriers into the picture as third-party checks on the system. And, by the way, creating a situation where there's more competition among agencies so that municipalities can fire an entire agency and hire another agency, whether that's in the public sector or the private sector. Having said all of that, we need to be able to trust that police officers are going to do what it is that we ask of them. And we don't ask too much. Indeed, I believe that we need to pare back the number of things of which we ask police officers. What went wrong in the couple of cases now, we're talking about Uvalde, we're talking about the case at the high school in Broward County, where the response was so slow. What went wrong could be blamed in part on training. I'm not a big fan of blaming it on training because by this point, officers ought to know what the protocol is. And just to remind your viewers, the protocol is that each officer needs to view himself or herself as an army of one. You do not wait for another officer unless that officer is within eyesight. In other words, you're probably not waiting for another officer. You're going to go in alone. You do not wait for supervision. You do not need to be told what to do. Indeed, you should probably be able to accomplish everything you need to be able to accomplish if you're the lead officer, even if your radio were to fail, because you need to be able to plan on taking care of business on your own. This is what went wrong in these cases where the first officers on the scene thought that they were supposed to wait for something or be told what to do. And, not being in their head, right? I don't know whether that was confusion, fear, some form of stupidity. I don't know. And I'm not a big fan of trying to be someone's psychologist after the fact. All we know is that they didn't behave the way they were paid to behave. And that's a crying shame. By the way, this is a lot more important than just law enforcement. I mean, quite literally, people died because of these mistakes that were made. Yeah. It's a horrible situation. The training has to be such, not only in these cases, but in all cases for law enforcement behavior. The training has to be more aligned with the values of the communities that hire these people. And this is where I believe that we've gone off the rails. Training in law enforcement has gone one direction, and the values of our communities have gone in another direction. And so we have fundamental problems in police culture, which is not to say the police culture isn't improving, because it is improving. It's just improving at a glacial pace. It's very slow. Cultural changes always take a long time. So maybe my comment wasn't really fair. Cultural changes take a long time, and police culture is going to be no exception. But there are important things that we can do now to accelerate the process of achieving cultural change in law enforcement. And one of those is to accelerate the pace at which we turn over officers to get rid of some of the old guard and to bring new officers in. Another is to get rid of qualified immunity, to bring in a requirement to carry your own liability insurance, not just because Americans deserve the right to seek redress in court, which is uber important, obviously, but also because it's a way to hold police officers accountable that, frankly, we just don't have today. We have it in many cases, and qualified immunity doesn't affect that many cases, but it's sort of a cultural touchstone. A lot of police officers believe that qualified immunity affects more cases than it actually does, and I believe that it therefore plays an outside role in maintaining an old-fashioned police culture. So there are things that we can do going forward. We need to slow down the power of the police unions, for example, just like we do teacher unions and the other public sector employee problem that we have in the United States that is so crucial. I don't know if that's an answer to your concerns about active shooter cases. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to touch on a little bit more on your reform ideas? Because I know that is something that's important to you, and we haven't spent much time on it. Just go ahead.
Yeah. There's two pieces, in the sense that there's the criminal justice overall framework, and there's changing the way that we manage law enforcement. I think those are two different things that are obviously heavily intertwined. We do need to get rid of the war on drugs. I believe that the way you do that is to first, of course, finalize, because we're not done with getting rid of the prohibition on marijuana. That needs to be done yesterday. I'm actually surprised. I'd be interested in your feedback on this. I'm actually surprised that it has taken as long as it has. I thought a few years ago it was going to go much more quickly than it has. But having said that, the next step is to get rid of the prohibition on drugs that are not addictive, because I believe the American public is much more open to that idea. I believe that, ironically, we will be able to make the case that the government's incompetence in the context of COVID will help us drive a wedge between the war on drugs and the American public in the case of vaccine requirements, but also in support for drug prohibition. So I think we need to go after that. And then the third step, and I'm sorry, this is likely a multi-year process, right? The third step will be to get the government completely out of any sort of prohibition on what you want to put in your body ultimately altogether. But I think the American public is going to have to get used to the idea of people having complete access to drugs that are not addictive first before to finish that. As far as the law enforcement
so legalize all drugs eventually. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we need to get, and I think the American public will, over the next few years, be much more ready to hear that than they are right now. I think that we need to begin to make that case, and the way that you make that case is twofold. Number one, there is an ethical matter at stake, that the government doesn't have the authority, doesn't have the moral authority, doesn't have the constitutional authority. The government doesn't exist in order to tell us what we can or cannot do with our bodies. And that's a case that I think most libertarians are comfortable making, that I think a lot of Americans are comfortable listening to. But I believe that the initial wedge that's going to be most successful is pointing out that the war on drugs, however you feel about drugs, you can be the most conservative person in the world, socially speaking. However you feel about it, empirically speaking, the war on drugs has been a failure. It would be very hard to argue that the government has been successful in any of its stated objectives. Reducing the amount of drugs that are involved with young people, with addiction.
Now, not to cut you off, but I think everybody here agrees, like, I think the only real question on the drug war in this circle, in this audience, is just, are you pushing for legalize all drugs now or legalize all drugs eventually? Like, I think everybody, I mean, my libertarian people probably all agree with the legalization aspect.
Would you say abolish the war on drugs on television, Mike, or would you not say that? If you got the opportunity.
I would say that we need to end the entire prohibition on drugs. Now, It's important that you also say, so don't mishear me. This is not an either or.
Sure.
It's important that you say both. You must say where we are going, which is the government doesn't have the authority to regulate what you do with your body. Full stop. But what's important is to be able to articulate how that is going to get done. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to complete the removal prohibition on marijuana. Then we're going to remove the prohibition on non-addictive drugs. You will see, my American friends, that this is going to make life better. It's going to make life better for people who use these drugs. It's going to make life better for those who don't want law enforcement resources dedicated to things that they shouldn't be dedicated to. It's going to improve the relationship between the government and our communities. And once you see that, you will see that we're also correct about ending the prohibition on all drugs. So this idea that you need to say end all prohibition now or not, it's not that simple. You say now clearly so that people understand the principles by which you're going to be guided. Now you say we need to end the prohibition on all drugs. That's going to take a while. Here's how we're going to get there. That's different than saying, I'm not going to tell you what my end game is, and just say to people, I want to get rid of the prohibition on just non-addictive drugs. And the reason that that matters is not just a matter of adherence to libertarians. Oh, I made a promise on some podcast 3 years ago. No, that's not the reason. The reason is so that you can help teach the American public the principles that are at stake, so that they will understand the direction we're going is a matter of principle, not a matter of mission creep, not a matter of, what we can politically tolerate. No, it's a matter of principle to guide the direction in which we're going. Does that make sense?
It does.
For this reason, you need to announce up front where you're going.
It does. Dave, you got any thoughts? Because you kind of asked it.
We might be splitting hairs here. I just think that if we were ever so fortunate to have a Libertarian Party presidential candidate get on like CNN to do a town hall or, a debate, and you get a few minutes to talk about the Libertarian position, it would, in my opinion, be a blunder to talk about how, if you were president, this is how I would dissect it. And I would start with these drugs, which don't cause much harm. And then I would with the weed. And then after that, we would go here. When in actuality, you should just go, the damage that has been done because of the war on drugs has done X, Y, and Z. The Libertarian Party is against it. Like, just in the clearest possible way. I might be splitting hairs there, but
yeah, and I have
as clear as possible.
I have a hard time focusing on anything. So yeah, the shorter and sweeter, the better. Like if you're asking for just advice, just make it short, punch, and you'll be able to get us. Just
Well, agree.
Tighten it up a bit.
I totally agree. And as a matter of principle, that is, what you would be shooting. But bear in mind that people are going to be impressed that you're not just throwing out principles, that you actually have, the credibility of having thought this through and how we're going to get there. And you're right, to Dave's point, there is credibility in being able to acknowledge and point out to people the damage that the war on drugs has done. As an empirical matter, however you feel about it, the war on drugs has been a complete disaster. And not just a disaster in the sense that it has not achieved its objectives, a disaster in the sense that it has caused so much harm, so much damage to communities, to lives. The government creates black markets, and black markets are extremely dangerous. And I do believe that is something you need to discuss from the standpoint of being an economist, not just a cop. As I used to say to all my fellow police officers, if you weren't a cop before becoming, I beg your pardon, if you weren't an economist before becoming a cop, become a cop will turn you into an economist, because you see the effects of bad public policy up, you see it every day. And most cops, therefore, I believe, although they're typically registered Republicans, they do have quite a libertarian leaning when it comes to being skeptical about how much of our, not only war on drugs, but much of the structure of the war on crime, even more generally, has played out.
You're muted, bud.
Oh shit! I do want to get to a few more chats here.
You're back.
Yes,
and we didn't talk about police reform, but you get the idea. Is that we need to bring in more competition, more market forces. Right. What we ultimately need to negotiate for against our unions is not the idea that we need to pay officers less. Indeed, I think we'd be better off if we paid officers more and maybe just hired fewer of them. But we need to stop negotiating so much on price. Nobody wants the cheapest cops to be running around armed, making decisions in their community. Mm-hmm. We need to get market forces in there to negotiate for being able to hold police officers accountable, more transparency in how they're trained, hired. We need more lateral capability to fire police officers. We need the community more involved with the hiring and training process so that people understand what it is that police officers are doing in your behalf, and so that we can make changes where necessary. These things are largely circumscribed by unions today, and to the detriment of our communities, and ironically, to the detriment of police officers themselves, because one of the reasons why cops and teachers don't make more money is because the unions preclude competition.
Yes, I like it. Now, there's been a few people in the chats mentioning that you said that you're a member of kind of all the caucuses, but people are saying that this is the tribalism. If you're a member of the CLC, then that's no bueno.
Deal breaker.
Deal breaker for, frankly, for some people, it is a deal breaker because
I'm just playing, man.
We're talking about two different groups that both of them say the other one is acting in bad faith. So how do you square that circle, or whatever the
that has absolutely not been my observation. By the way, that is, yes, I have heard that from some people. I don't hear that from many people. people in the know, which is most people, or people who just don't pay any attention at all, which is another huge group. But most people, I think, recognize that the things that are said that are negative about the various caucuses are not said in the name of another caucus. To unpack that, what I mean is, yes, there are members of all the caucuses that say stupid shit. No one could argue against that. But to the extent to which that is done, it is not done in the name of a particular caucus.
Dave, any thoughts?
Maybe people have said stupid things, that I'm not aware of, but they haven't done it either to me or that I'm aware of. No, I mean, we all have lines that we wouldn't tolerate our friends crossing or the people that we work with crossing. But I'm just being honest. The people that I have worked with and with whom I have had conversations in the Radical Caucus, in the Classical Liberal Caucus, I have found them to be very impressive, actually, very thoughtful. That's not to say that I haven't seen what I thought were mistakes made. I'm not going to call them out right now, but I have seen what I thought were strategic or tactical mistakes.
You're going to call them out in the after party, right? You're gonna spill all the tea in the after party, right?
I don't know that that's fair. I don't know that's fair. By the way, there are things that I have seen in our own caucus, in the Mises caucus, that I kind of wish were done differently. Yeah, that's not to say I'm always right, and so if they had put me in charge, we wouldn't have made any mistakes. But yeah, I've seen things coming out of all sides that I would have done differently. But I have not seen really stupid stuff that was done in the name of the caucus directed at the other caucuses.
Dave, you probably know more about the caucus drama than I do if you want to weigh in.
Is there caucus drama? No, I don't have any.
All right. I don't know. I mean, people seem to very much dislike the CLC. I don't know that much about it. I don't know.
Well, listen, if we're going to talk shit on the CLC, I'm happy to do that. There's plenty to complain about. Those guys, the guy who is the chair of that caucus 2-3 years ago said that, and this is actually, maybe we should get your opinion on this, Mike, because you're a presidential candidate. He said that Donald Trump was an existential threat, tried to stop an election. 1/6 was a total insurrection, all this crap. So let me ask you that, man. I mean, one, does that tell you something about that guy? Oh, by the way, he was going to vote. He said if Trump was allowed in 2024, he'd vote for Biden. That very same guy is leading a caucus in the Libertarian Party. And he just got here, again, 3 years ago. So sorry if this feels like, litmus test for people. I don't give a shit. I'm a gatekeeper. You're damn right. I'm keeping the gates. It's Davey, baby. I'm keeping the gates. So that doesn't impress me much. And I would do my best to keep his influence out of the party.
I'm sorry. Let me make sure I understand the question. Sure. You're suggesting that we should be upset with someone because they have a preference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump?
No. If you want to be upset about something, it should be that somebody who was 3 years ago not in the party and said that he would vote for Joe Biden because he is essentially a 90s blue dog Democrat, that he is now leading a caucus that aims to, he has so many complaints. They just put out a 100-page report on their complaints about the Mises caucus and all the damage that caucus has done. But he hasn't been here long, and he hasn't even been a libertarian long. It's just kind of just stinks a little bit. So I don't know. Get your opinion
I appreciate
on that.
And I haven't seen. Yeah, I appreciate that. And to be honest, I have not seen this report. Shame on me. Maybe you want to forward it to me, and maybe I shouldn't read it. I'm not trying to be involved in, caucus.
Go check if there's good stuff there. Let me know. Sure.
On our staff, we have a bunch of people. I don't know that it's half. I guess at some point I should do a count, but we have many people who are in the Mises caucus. We do have representation from the Classical Liberal caucus. So yeah, I try to be inclusive rather than exclude people who are members of the caucuses. Like I say, I'm a big believer in the caucuses. Having said that, I'm no fan of Donald Trump. So there is probably very little someone could say nasty about Trump that would turn me off.
I'm fine with dogging on Trump. It's when it's dishonest and just regurgitating what the mainstream media is using against Trump that I have issue with.
Is he an extra threat? Is he an extra existential threat that no other president has been. That's kind of the view that the classical liberal might take.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. Is he significantly worse than past presidents? No, I think each president, and maybe you and I disagree with this, I don't know where you're going with it, but my own view is that many presidents have made very significant contributions to getting us further and further away from the Constitution. And not just from the Constitution per se, but further and further away from the ideals of the Constitution. Presidents who have concentrated power, both Republicans and Democrats. You don't have to look any further than just the number of executive orders, for example, and not just the expansion of the Defense Department and the budget and the failure to reform entitlements, but the expansion of the scale and scope of the regulatory authority in our lives. That was not Donald Trump, right? Indeed, Trump did have the right attitude toward the blob, so give him credit for that. He did keep us out of a war. You got to hand it to him there as well. He is not at his core a libertarian, and I think that some libertarians make that this mistake.
Absolutely.
Donald Trump is a populist, and we should not confuse those things. In the same sense that I see RFK 2 gain some popularity inside of our party, which I find slightly unnerving. I do appreciate RFK 2 having the right instincts when it comes to, and I want to change my own words there, having the right position on a vaccine mandate and vaccines in general, right? I don't know that that is instinctual for him. RFK 2 is, I don't believe fundamentally, not only is he not a libertarian, he's not even a populist. He is a statist. He's a good government guy. He wants government to work better.
Mm-hmm.
He wants environmental regulation to work better. He wants the vaccine process to work better. I don't think that fundamentally the reason he's all upset about vaccine mandates is because he's a libertarian. I think the reason he's upset about vaccine mandates is because he's upset about vaccines. And that's a big difference. For me, and you talk about litmus tests, here's mine. If you had a vaccine that was perfect, and by perfect, I mean there's no side effects, it can't hurt anybody. If you take the vaccine, you're going to live. And if you don't take the vaccine, you're going to die. Okay, so it's 100% vaccine. Does the government have the authority, have the right, have the ethics on its side to force you to take it? That answer has got to be no.
Based.
Good answer.
So it seems to me that we are barking up the wrong tree when we attack the vaccines themselves. No, the reason we're against vaccine mandates has nothing to do with how good or bad the vaccines are. They illustrate the fact that vaccine mandates are horrible.
And also
But
the
they're
vaccine
horrible
sucks,
because-
but that's a different thing.
So real quick,
And
Mike, you said
vaccines suck.
that to me is if you went out and you told that to the American public that, hey, if there's a virus out there that has a 100% death rate, the government still doesn't have a right to keep you in your house. That's scarier than saying I'm going to legalize all drugs to the typical voter, I think. It's just something to think about. You know what
Is
I
it
mean?
more
I agree with
scary?
you. That's yeah, for the average voter. Like, I think that they would say, hey, they might have went too far, but that's because it's the common cold. If it really was dangerous, sure, they should drop the hammer down.
So I think
When
what Dave is
obviously
saying
the
is,
three of us
please
would-
say that. Please keep saying that because it's more scary to the
Yeah, it's
average.
good.
Maybe. I'm not sure because we're not saying you have to go out, and we're not saying you can't get vaccinated, right? You know, if you believe that the vaccine is a good idea for you, you know, go for it. Get your 11 vaccines, collect them all. And you might be right. The vaccine might be a good idea. That's for you and your doctor to decide, or however you make decisions. You're probably better off getting the raw data yourself if the government will release it, which is one of the reasons why we need less government intervention in the vaccine process, so we can demand disclosure from private sector organizations. But that's going down another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But you get my point, is that some of these politicians come up with policy positions that we like on the surface, but it's not because they're libertarians. It's not because their instincts are in the right place.
I like it. Now, we're not going to be able to get through all these, but maybe we'll save some for later. But we do have to touch on a couple more. Breaking the Floss says, fake super chat. When you were a cop, how many cops did you report on, and how many times you lied in court?
I never lied in court. I'm trying to figure out a way to tell you to believe me, right? I don't know how to. Trust me, I never lied in court. Well, there's an old saying, which I actually believe is largely, not perfectly true, but I believe is largely true. The cops make shitty liars. And that's for a variety of reasons. But I never, to be fair, that's not making me out to be, Mr. Super Ethics. I've never been in a position where I felt like, I had to lie. I'm trying to imagine. I guess the implication of the question is lie in behalf of another cop. Mm-hmm. No, I certainly never had to. I never had a fellow cop put me in that position, which would certainly be awkward. And in fairness, in response to that question, I was lucky. Before you think I'm trying to portray myself as super cop here, I was lucky in a couple of regards. Number one, I didn't have to participate in the war on drugs because we had a separate drug unit. I was lucky I didn't have to get involved with the vice crap and the, pursuing hookers on the corner because we had a separate unit for that. So I was able to dodge those bullets. And, if I could imagine someone arguing with me and saying, as a libertarian, you should have gotten involved and tried to shut it down. Well, that's not actually how it works. So I was willing to become a cop. I wasn't willing to become a drug cop.
What's that, Dave?
What's that?
I said the thin blue line ain't nothing to fuck with.
Was there any? Was there ever a scenario where you were in a position to call out corruption and did or didn't in that position?
I'm trying to remember if, I don't remember ever seeing any, what you would really call corruption. There was a circumstance, I don't want to give too many details because there are certain individuals who deserve their privacy. I'll talk to you guys about it afterwards.
Sure.
There was a case when I was first coming on in training. And I saw something, let me characterize it as old school, right? Mm-hmm. And I brought it up with my boss. And he blew me off. I went to him later, and the answer I got was that he would take care of it. And I don't know what became of it. And to be honest, it's always bothered me. Mm. Should I have done more? Could I have done more? I don't know. But that was the one case where I actually, saw something with my eye that I thought was what I would characterize as bad policing. Mm-hmm. There were other cases. There are gray areas in police work. One of the things that I discovered that I was not initially anticipating, nobody ever knows exactly what your next job is going to be like. So that happens. One of the things that surprised me was the extent to which police officers have tremendous latitude in how they take care of any individual case. You're not out there by yourself. It is a team sport, but you are largely without supervision. And so whichever is the lead officer in any particular case has a great deal of latitude. Most of the time, that is something the libertarian would say is a good thing. You have the latitude not to arrest someone, for example. You have the latitude to try to do the right thing, to help somebody. All of that is good. And that's, 4 times out of 5. But it is what leads to the things that we see on video recordings that get spread around that all break our hearts and make us sick to our stomach, especially if you're a cop, by the way. And for that reason, the body-worn cameras are a great boon. There are reasons why cops are uncomfortable wearing. I mean, nobody wants to wear a camera at work because it makes you feel like you're always being watched. Well, that's true. But if you're going to have that kind of authority, power, I guess you might call it, and latitude, it's just the way it's going to have to be. And it has contributed to making improvements. I have witnessed this. Police officers behave better when the recording is there. You do lose some of the latitude you wish you had in terms of not making arrests. Weirdly, interestingly, that does happen. If your department has a policy that we're always going to arrest in this situation, the latitude that you may have enjoyed the first 10 years of your career that you wish you had once the camera is instituted. So there are still some bugs in the system that we need to work out. But largely, the body-worn cameras are a good idea and get rid of most, not all, of the bad behavior that you want called out on it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense as most of what you'd want in an answer.
I think so. Dave?
No, I'm
thoughts?
done.
Cool. There was another one here that I wanted to pull up real quick. While I'm trying to find that, you said you're open to us giving you advice on ways to make your campaign better. And my first bit of advice, as a video guy, this is my expertise. And don't use blue light; it makes you look dead. That's all.
Agreed. Especially if you're as pale as I am. Agreed.
Just a little side note there. Somebody was asking. I'm having a hard time finding it here.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
When I was in Florida, I had a better tan.
Of course, I had a nice bright red one. Yes. Somebody had asked. I can't find it right now, but who would be? Here it is. My real fake name says fake super chat. Who would be an ideal running mate for from Mike's point of view? The Libertarian Party does. They vote separately on vice president and presidential candidate, and sometimes that works out well in the case of Spike and Joe, where Spike was there to pick up the pieces. Not necessarily, I don't think that she was Joe's first choice, but that's how it works in our system. For you, right now, is there anybody who's running or that you've talked to or anything that you think would be a good fit for you if you got the nomination?
Yes.
Nice. Would you like to elaborate? Or keeping that under wraps?
No.
If it's not Chase Oliver, I would be really blown away.
If it's not?
But you don't have to go any further if you don't want to. No pressure, Mike.
Let me put it this way. It would have to be someone who would contribute to the branding that we're seeking. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a career in public service. But it does mean that you would have to bring some credibility. And certainly we wouldn't want to be paired up with someone who we thought would undermine it. In other words, I'm not a big fan of the strategy that says you need to get someone who's very different from you. Mm-hmm. Not a fan of the for the old people in your audience or the history buffs, not a big fan of the John Kennedy picking Lyndon Johnson strategy.
Yeah.
This is the concession that the feds make them do.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again? You cut out.
This is like the concession that they make. It's the same with the Mike Pence to Donald Trump or the George H.W. Bush to Reagan, which you're familiar with. But yeah, that's the concession they make to the deep state. You install the guy to keep an eye on the other guy. That's my opinion.
Agreed, and for other reasons as well. Yeah, you're absolutely correct about that. I appreciated, for example, Bill Clinton's selection of Al Gore, as weird as that is, because I had a certain amount of disdain for each of them. But I appreciated that Al Gore reinforced Bill Clinton's brand of trying to be a more forward-looking, more market-oriented Democrat. That was the brand he was pursuing. And the fact that he had to take a southern statewide elected recognizable politician just like him was something that he had to bite off. And a lot of consultants told him it was a bad idea, but I thought it was the right move. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying we want someone who's comfortable with a policy forward campaign, someone who's comfortable with the idea of it being a collection of the most transformational ideas, and they have to be willing to go out there and sell them. We don't want someone thinking that, at some point we're going to back down. Don't want someone thinking that we're going to, turn around and run when people say, well, you talk about police reform, but you're a cop. No, I talk about police reform because I am a cop.
Right.
That's why. I'm not a big fan of this idea that you need to fall into the bucket of defund the police and the Democratic Party, or back the blue in all. What was the Arizona Republican candidate's statement?
Kerry Lake.
No. For Senate was back the blue in all
Blake
cases. Yeah, Blake. Back the blue in every case, something like this. I mean, I'm a cop and I don't even say stuff that dumb.
Right.
You can't go in one of those two polarizing directions. You got to realize sometimes that reform is hard. And you're going to have to bring some transformational ideas, but you got to do so with some credibility at the same time that people will listen to you. Polling data shows that people actually like cops. Polling data also show that people are frustrated with policing.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be able to hold both of those things in your head at the same time.
So for your running mate, should we just start guessing and you can blink once or twice for yes or no? Is it Bill Weld?
No.
It's Bill Weld, isn't it?
Yes, it's Bill Weld.
Don't you fucking
You
do
made
that
me
to us.
crumble. Cracked under pressure. As a matter of fact, Bill is sitting right here with me.
Damn it. I knew
I
it.
want to say a few
They
words
always
to the
have a
audience.
handler. They always have a handler. Now, would you consider possibly, like you said that you don't necessarily want somebody who's different from you, but you think there might be value. I mean, there was value in the Joe Jorgensen case where Spike still brought some value. Have you considered like maybe Joe Exotic run with you, hypothetically? Would you consider that?
That's not happening. No, that's not.
Listen, Mike, when he does this kind of shit, all it makes me want to do is join your campaign.
Right.
That's driving me right into your
Wow,
arms.
that is transformational.
That's it.
Yeah, Dave hates my Joe Exotic shit more than anybody, so it's all good.
Yeah, I'm not tolerating that. I need
Well,
a guy who
look,
can wear
I
a
do
jacket like that.
believe-
Keep it nice and business casual. I need that.
That's right.
I do believe that we can work together as much as we may from time to time want to punch each other in the face. And by the way,
You mean you and us or you and Joe
I
Exotic?
hope that I meant you and us.
Oh, I don't want to punch anybody in the face.
And I hope that no one gets the impression that I'm trying to suggest that you shouldn't want to punch me in the face. It's okay if you do. And it's okay if we continue to feel that way next year and 2 years from now and 12 years from now. That doesn't mean that we can't work together. It also doesn't mean that we shouldn't work together. There are plenty of cases where we can disagree about certain elements, but we need to keep our eye on the ball. We need to keep an eye on the ball, and that is getting the message out in order to make changes in American politics. We can play a major role on the American political landscape. We have a big opportunity to do that. We all understand why. By the way, we haven't really talked about, Dave, you almost brought it up. We haven't talked about the fact that one of the reasons why we have such an opportunity is because the leadership of each of those two other parties is really bad. Let's just use that word.
That's the crux behind my whole push for Joe Exotic. Like, let him go destroy the Democratic Party and push the hell out of him until we don't have a Democratic Party anymore.
I love that attitude. I just don't think that Joe Exotic would earn the attention of enough of the people whose attention we need to make that happen. Or if he could, he should go ahead and do that without being in the presidential race.
Any damage he can do to the Democratic Party, no matter how small or large, I support it.
I would like to propose something that I think might be a unity thing for the three of us. But Dan, if you really want to reform the Democratic Party, what you should take a peek. Like, look, we don't have to support anybody in the Democratic Party, but what Robert F. Kennedy is doing in the party right now could be kind of what like Mises Caucus did to the Libertarian Party, is just make it kind of bring it back to its roots a little bit. Make the Democratic Party less malevolent again. Make them a little less evil, and that will be a win for liberty. And we still have everything we've got going on over here. We can sharpen the spear of libertarianism while they fix their ship, you know? But I don't think, you know, if you want to sink their ship,
I want to sink all the ships.
Exotic, yeah, I don't know. I'm not there yet. I don't want to burn it down, bro.
Similarly, I wish that this fella Ramaswamy would get a little bit of attention. He is also not a libertarian. I think, I could be wrong, but time will tell. So you may want to play this back in a few months and make a fool of me. I believe that Ramaswamy's instincts are more libertarian than RFK too. I think Ramaswamy has some libertarian instincts, but he is pushing himself to be more socially conservative so that he can get play inside the Republican Party.
Sure.
What do you think of that theory?
It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, align with whoever you align with on certain issues. Like Ramaswamy, if we could get more Republicans that libertarians kind of want to support and they're having a hard time not supporting, like iron sharpening iron all around, if we could get decent candidates that would be passable on all of them, great. But that doesn't mean if Tulsi Gabbard says she's a libertarian tomorrow, she should be the libertarian nominee for president, as I've heard some people say.
Correct.
She still wouldn't sell.
Right. Absolutely. And we can go ahead and wrap it up. I know you got to get going. You got a hard out in about 10 minutes. I think we're going to jump over and do a little bit of an after party. If you want to join us for the beginning of that, you're welcome to, but you don't have to. You've certainly been a good sport and suffered enough for the last hour and 48 minutes.
You guys have been great sports. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I'm sorry about the places where we might have disagreements, but I'm not sorry in the sense that, I think we surfaced them. I think that we can work through them.
Sure.
And I'm not sufficiently arrogant to say just because we disagree, that makes you idiots. It makes you wrong, but it doesn't make you idiots, okay?
Yeah. I appreciate that, certainly. And what you have over any Joe Jorgensen and any Gary Johnson and any of them is that they never came on this show. They never had the balls. Joe Jorgensen might have if I pushed her, but just your willingness to mingle with the annoying podcasters that'll call you on some bullshit and different things. Like, I respect it, I really do, and I don't think Gary Johnson would have done that. So props.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate that, but I actually like both of you guys already, so don't give me too much credit. One thing that I think I have that separates me from Joe Jorgensen, and I believe that this says a lot more than the sentence itself. So I'll let that sink in. One of the big differences between me and Joe Jorgensen is I am a big Spike Cohen fan.
Based.
You ever heard that motherfucker?
I see what
speak?
you're saying.
He can light it up.
Yeah, I don't think she was that big of a fan. So that's certainly a step in the right direction for you.
Can't hear.
Sounds like the sound went funny.
Fucking
yeah. Did you mute yourself?
Fucker. Okay.
See, I thought it was me, Mike. It was the host.
I was muted on this scene.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, what I was saying was thank you again so much for being here. If you have any final plugs, anything, I hope that we can do this again in the future if you get the nomination, or even if you don't. I enjoy the chat, and go ahead and tell people where they can find you and all the stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk later, of course, in this format or any other format. Go to MikeTermaat.com. Thanks for putting it up there because it's hard for people to spell. The other thing is, you might find more interesting goldnewdeal.org. Because it's the platform, and I believe the platform is honestly more important than I am. If you really have several minutes to waste, go to MikeTermaat.com and read my bio. And then rethink your life. If you've got time for that, there is something seriously wrong. You should be going to goldnewdeal.org. It's the platform. It's more important. Don't go to goldnewdeal.com because they'll try to sell you something, which is, by the way, not a bad idea. Buying gold is not a bad idea. I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm just saying it's the wrong website.
Yeah.
Go to goldnewdeal.org and read about the platform.
Absolutely. Mike, thank you so much for being here, man. It's been an absolute blast. And again, we'll do it again soon. Best of luck to you. Make us
Take
proud.
care. Good to see
Mike,
you guys.
real quick, was this your toughest interview yet? Or have you had a tougher one?
My toughest interview yet? Yes, my toughest interview yet. I have had the pleasure on 4 different occasions to debate with communists. So that was more annoying, but not as difficult. How's that?
Yeah. It
I
is
appreciate
harder.
Mike.
It is
Thanks
harder
for
to
your
argue
time.
with people who agree with you and who respect you, and we do hope you the best. But again, the only point of this is we got to hold ourselves accountable, hold our own accountable, and make sure that who goes up there, we can get behind them. But thanks, Mike.
No question about it.
We'll catch you next
Thank you,
time.
Mike.
And
All right,
yeah,
take care,
we
guys.
can just wrap it here. Whatever, guys. Thanks for watching. Commenters, thanks for commenting. We'll probably do an after party. Keep a lookout for the Patreon. We'll be over there momentarily. But yeah, this has been fun. And until next time, question everything. Stay comfortable. We'll talk to you then.
Welcome to the system, everyone's a victim. Doesn't matter if you're black or white, it hates you all. Here inside the system, violence is a symptom. Fighting for what's right, but somehow everyone is wrong.